We're here on That's a Tap with CT, DJ. We're going to recap the crazy UFC Sydney card in which Sean Strickland shocked the world. And I'm here with Sean Strickland's bodyguard, DJ. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, CT. I don't think Sean Strickland needs a bodyguard. But hey, woo, did not think. Yeah, look, in the preview, I said hopefully I gave my prediction. You guys can go back and have a look at it. I don't want to linger on it too much, but I was very confident in Israel Adesanya winning that. I said it won't even be close. And look, I got to own up to it. And then little did I think on Monday evening I'll be seated here talking about what actually happened and Sean Strickland now being the middleweight champion. But man, what a main event! Good card. There's some good performances throughout the card. We obviously had a very strong CKB presence in that card, and we'll touch on those as we progress through the episode. But obviously, we got to start with the main event, man. Talking of upsets, I think this sits up there with some of the big upsets that we've seen. The recent ones that come to memory are like obviously the Juliana Pena one, Alex Grasso beating Shevchenko, and so on and so forth. And this ranks right up there. I know you were off air mentioning about UFC 193, which also ironically happened to be down under, more in Melbourne, where Holly Holmes beat Ronda Rousey, the then dominant Ronda Rousey, and the same thing, man, like similar. I would even say that this is a little bit more. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, but I would still think this is a more bigger upset than that. When you consider all things that happened in that main event, who was the champion going into that fight, his resume, who was fighting him, and then sort of the manner in which the fight panned out. So yeah, what did you think? Did you think it was a big upset?
Yeah, absolutely, man. But I think more so also because the fight was kind of such short notice. It was slapped
Yeah,
together as, kind of the last option, and it almost didn't happen. A lot of things had to happen for this to go ahead. It's been talked about, obviously, the timeline of Whitaker and Dricus fighting, both of them, Whitaker losing, Dricus not being
yeah,
ready.
yeah,
Sean Strickland never flown outside of the US before in his life. Looked like he had the time of his life.
man.
Straight away off the plane, getting into a punch on with a fan. Yeah, UFC got the bodyguard involved. Um, but yeah, man, definitely an upset in terms of like I don't think I didn't personally discount Strickland's fighting skills. I just didn't see it happening the way it happened. Like
Absolutely.
the way it panned out, DJ, it was more shocking to me. How about you?
Man, absolutely, 100%. Like I said, like again, same thing. I never discounted Sean Strickland. I just was thinking of in terms of looking at the past five fights and leading up to it, like the Israel Adesanya sort of uh, uh, pathway to this fight and his last few fights compared to Sean Strickland. And I was thinking, the strength of schedule has been very different. Right, and then looking at what he did to Israel Adesanya, that is what he did to Alex Pereira, and then looking at what happened in terms of Strickland versus Pereira, and all these kind of things, putting all that into consideration, and expecting Israel Adesanya to be able to continue that momentum and that performance into this fight is what sort of made me very confident in terms of what the outcome will be in my prediction. However, obviously, man, like you got to own up to it. I'm eating my words right now. Sean Strickland proved not just me, but a lot of people wrong, and it was a sizable underdog going into the fight. I think it was a negative 670 or
Hmm.
something. For Israel Adesanya being the favorite, and rightfully so, man. Like it was a tailor made matchup for Israel Adesanya to beat him. Sort of decisively. It was a striking matchup. And in terms of the whole fight, across the 5 rounds, the interesting thing is there was no takedowns attempted. Right? I mean, I was thinking. I mean, look, the only way Sean Strickland could at least even make it close is sort of using his punches to set up a clinch or a takedown. But he didn't need any of that, man. Like, and he just kept marching forward and kept putting up that pressure on Adesanya. And I felt like Adesanya was a bit flat-footed, very unusual. Look, and I know there's a lot of this going around. We're saying, don't take away from Sean Strickland's victory. I don't think we are. I don't think anyone is, not even Adesanya. He gave him his props. Adesanya's coach, Eugene Behrman, gave him his props as well and said, look, he came and he implemented a game plan that put Adesanya on the back foot in terms of literally on the back foot. And he found himself fighting across those 5 rounds on the back foot. He had to keep, obviously we know Adesanya is a counter striker, but what Strickland did well was, in addition to that constant pressure, sticking to the absolute fundamentals. It was just a 1-2 and a kick. That's all it was, and it was effective. And towards the end of that round, dropped Adesanya. Stats has it that this was the first time Adesanya has been dropped in MMA, and that was by Sean Strickland. Man, it was just absolute scenes. And then I thought, okay, second round seems like Adesanya's back. He's maybe underestimated him. Maybe he was just shaking off the cobwebs. He's back now. But then the second round was obviously clearly Adesanya's. Everyone saw it that way. And then, goes back to sort of Strickland doing what he was doing in the first round, but a little bit more aggressively. And we saw him grow in strength as the rounds progressed. And we saw Adesanya confidence diminishing and sort of, not seeing much coming out of him in terms of output. It was weird, obviously seeing Israel Adesanya like that, because we're not used to that. And he's always found a way to counter that. And go back to the Kelvin Gastelum fight, that was a very close fight, which could have gone either way. But in the
Mm.
last round, we see Adesanya staring across his cage, and that iconic moment, he said, "I'm prepared to die." I feel like this was quite different to that. We don't know what happened, obviously, and we know the type of person he is. He's not someone to come out and give excuses. So they've asked for the rematch. I know we're going to talk about it. What's next for each of these guys? But yeah, man. But we're going to talk about Sean Strickland. In terms of how well he implemented the game plan, right? And I think the whole fight week, he was very relaxed. I feel like even though he was, fighting as the not the hometown person, but I felt like the hometown support was for Strickland. We even at the ceremonial weigh-ins, we found a huge pop for Strickland, whereas not so much. There was some boos even for Adesanya, which was very surprising to see and very unexpected. And it kind of shows that people are resonating with the
Yeah.
personality that's Sean Strickland, very brash spoken, no filter, and I maybe sort of in the current circumstances that resonates well with the MMA fandom, I guess, and that sort of carried through to the fight. And then he was very at ease. I felt. I don't think the pressure got to him. I did feel when he was walking out, oh, he looks a bit tense, but man,
Mm.
that performance sort of put a full stop to that.
Yeah, man, I think Strickland's blessed with a quality that not all fighters have. I think it's something to do with like he just doesn't care. He just doesn't. He just CBF, and you
Yep.
notice like you notice other guys like Kevin Holland, yeah, Hamzat. Those guys come to mind in terms of just their demeanor. They
Yep.
go into the cage, whatever the result, they're like. Whereas you can kind of see Whitaker, a guy like him, he can kind of look nervous at times, a
Yep.
bit. Yes, he has that killer instinct, like all fighters kind of do, but
Yep.
Strickland just has that kind of aura where
Yep.
obviously he's fundamentally sound. He believes that he's going to be hard to penetrate. He's strong, uh, good frame, broad shoulders. Like yeah, the 1-2. He's just an
Yep.
incredible boxer. What he does works for him. Um, on the flip side, I think Izzy. I think there's a few factors, and I'll get your thoughts. I think he's obviously a little worn down. I know that's been floated around, but yeah, he's fought a lot, as has Strickland. But Izzy's fought 5 rounders and championship fights, and honestly, and you can speak to this. And I think getting knocked out against Pereira 2 fights ago for a guy that thought he was invincible, I think that can, it's a big thing to get absolutely knocked out, get stopped. And yes, he bounced back in the last fight, but we can't forget he was actually, you know, in trouble in the fight where he came back to knock Pereira out. So I think it's a bit of everything. He's a bit worn down, and I think he underestimated Strickland a little bit, maybe through his overconfidence. And I think after that first round, DJ, when Strickland landed that blow, that's what planted doubt in the mind of Izzy. What do you think?
Yeah, man, I completely agree with everything you've said there. I think to start off with sort of what you touched on in terms of that aura of Sean Strickland and sort of that caliber and type of fighter he is, and I think I'd put him in sort of the same category in terms of fighting skills as like the likes of Colby Covington, even the fighting persona, because they're so brash
Mm.
spoken and they sometimes say the most ridiculous things that you tend to forget their skill set in
Yes.
terms of fighting, right? Um, when you look at Strickland, he's always been great. If you look at the last fights he lost to Pereira, man. There's no shame in that. Then obviously, you try to fight fire with fire, and then Pereira, you don't play that game with Alex Pereira, right? He's a monster of a man, knocked him out, right? But then when you look at the other loss, which was Jared Cannonier, it was a very close fight. I actually thought Sean Strickland won that fight, and that was a bounce back and a quick turnaround after that knockout. And then obviously he's continued. He's fought Imavov since then, and then he's fought Abbas Magomedov, and now he's
Yeah.
fighting Adesanya. To be honest, he's actually fought more in the past 12 months as opposed to
Yeah.
Israel Adesanya. Right now, in terms of also look, man, again, like sometimes that the what we see or what appears in front of our eyes makes us not realize what's going on in the background. And I think during this fight week, we also got to learn a lot more about Sean Strickland. Obviously, when you're in a championship fight, you get more in-depth view into sort of their background in terms of more interviews they get to do, the embeddeds, and all these kind of things, right? It made me realize, sort of the personal battles that he's had to fight in the background, and sort of when he talks about his childhood and what he had to endure and encounter there in terms of domestic abuse. Man, they're powerful things, and to have battled all those, and it kind of now we get to see sort of more of that picture, and we get to sort of empathize more with the person who is Sean Strickland instead of that persona that we see. It's not a persona per se that's fake. It's just him. It's real, but it
Mm.
makes more sense, I guess. And even the sit down he did with DC sheds a lot of light in terms of and even sort of how well thought of he is in terms of certain things he does. Right? He's someone who's been exposed to fighting from a very small age, not just inside a cage, but in life, and he knows no other way other than to fight. And his go-to method in terms of tackling these things is violence, and he's now learned to channel that into a sport which is MMA, which is done in middle. He is now the middleweight champion of the world, and he did it with no doubt, man. There was no flash knockout. There was no, Izzy was winning 5 rounds and then he knocked him out. None of that, right?
Yeah.
It was a dominant win. That's the end of that, right? And he knocked him down, and then also clean swept the cards, and there was no controversy anywhere. All the judges had the same scorecard, verdict,
Mm.
the judges' scorecard were aligned, which means the fans thought the same thing. So yeah, man,
Yeah.
Strickland should be very proud of himself. He's a worthy champion. He's beaten one of the best middleweights. Going into this in the preview, I told that I feel Israel Adesanya is the best middleweight to ever do it, and I still stand by it. And he beat him,
Yeah.
right? And that speaks volumes of who Strickland is. And look, even if you look at the pre-fight, build up, you see how much he believed in himself, right? He said, "Look, I
Mm.
know who I
Yeah.
am." Right? People forget that I can fight, right? And he showed that, right? And you've also got to give credit to his corner, man. His coach, Eric Nixick at Extreme Couture down there in Las
Definitely.
Vegas. Man, there's a championship team. They've led people like Francis Ngannou to championship, now a second belt, right? Man, look, even their corner worked, perfectly. You can see they're in sync. The coach and the fighter are in sync. You can see what sort of switches Strickland on. It wasn't the traditional, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It was kind of saying, like, man, we're not going to get into a boring decision. Go get this motherfucker out, or like, steal the
Mm.
round, like that. Sort of like, you can see that shows that level of understanding that they have between coach and fighter as well. So, man, kudos to that team. Kudos to Sean Strickland. Well done. You know, and then to talk about Izzy, obviously, man, like fatigue, it plays a big part. And I feel like the biggest factor here is the mental fatigue,
Yep.
because he's a specimen. He's an absolutely top-notch athlete, right? He looks after himself in terms of fitness and all of that. But there is an element called mental fatigue which catches up to us. And if you look at the storyline before the Strickland fight was the Alex Pereira fight, and this was a demon that has been chasing him for years, not just that
Mm.
first Pereira fight. This has been something since his kickboxing days. That this guy's had this thing, it's a monkey on his shoulder, and he wanted to get off. And to be so close to winning that and then losing the belt, and sort of while he's so good at sort of channeling all the energy into in a positive way, it is still a lot to take on in terms of a lot of people, the criticism and taking that on board, coming back, preparing mentally for that fight. I can guarantee you, he would have been fully focused on that fight. Every ounce of his mental fortitude was targeted or focused towards that second Pereira fight, which he won. And I think that kind of gives you that wave of relief, but it has taken a lot out of you mentally. And I think it'll do a world of good for Israel Adesanya to take some time off. But
Yeah.
not because, look, to be honest, he could fight again next month. He could fight Strickland, and I'll still, predict him to get the win. And that's the
Mm.
skill set of Israel Adesanya. But and sort of how much he learns in terms of losses and comes back. But I think in terms of the bigger picture and longevity in mind, I feel like taking some time off and then coming back. And
Yeah.
he's earned the right to come back into a championship fight, but it doesn't have to be the very next one. It could take some time,
Yeah.
sit back, let the division
Yeah.
play out. I really like the Strickland Rickers fight, right? As much as it cost us that Rickers fight with Adesanya, it would have been a great fight. It'd still be right. Imagine a world where Dricus wins the title and then Adesanya comes back and that's the fight. And then he can defend again against Strickland if he wants to get that fight back. It opens up a whole new world for Robert
Yeah.
Whittaker, right? Like he hasn't fought Strickland yet. He's one of those top middleweights he hasn't fought.
Yeah.
Kananaya again, the only person who's also. There's plenty of options for Strickland. We would like to probably, I guess, sit back and see some of these different matchups as well.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. 100% agree with you in terms of what I want to see next. We're on the same page because one, I want to see Izzy back at his best, and
Yeah,
just to touch briefly, lastly, on the fatigue issue with Izzy, a fighter might feel physically fresh, like I'm ready, I'm at my best, but we truly never know. And can we see a fighter at their best when they're
yeah,
fighting that often? Yeah, they might still be the champion and they might find the way to win a fight, but that doesn't mean they're at their best, right? For a fighter to
yeah,
truly be at their best, they need to be mentally, physically rested. And I think,
absolutely.
I don't know if you saw Dricus's tweet, but he tweeted again today about, um, you know, his intention, stating that, okay, I want Izzy, but Strickland, you and me, like,
Yeah,
I'm interested. I want to fight you. I want to fight Izzy at his best. I don't. He called him an amateur again, like Strickland did. I think that's a
yeah,
bit of banter, but
yeah,
the world saw Izzy's beatable, and I think it wasn't. It's a surprise to me, but wasn't so much as a shock because we saw it with Pereira, and
yeah,
I feel like yeah, Izzy has been either proven to be vulnerable, beatable, or the regression is there through the fatigue. Um,
yeah.
One of those things, but yeah, 100% agree with you in terms of Izzy deserves the rematch. But the
Yeah.
funny thing is, he may never need to fight Strickland again because let's say the belt changes hands again, and then all he has to do is focus on the next opponent.
Man, it is a funny sport. You know what I mean? Yeah, very unpredictable. You never know what happens, right? Like I mean, 2 months ago we saw Whitaker lose, and we never thought that'll happen. And then 2 months, fast forward 2 months, and we now see Israel Adesanya lose to Strickland as well. So yeah, man, like it's an unpredictable sport, but it also kind of speaks volumes to the greatness of the sport, right? Anyone on any given day, if you come in prepared, if you stick to your game plan, you can come out victorious,
Yeah,
and
and
that's what it was.
yeah, I think I've said to you before, styles make fights as well, and that's why you never count anyone out. And in fact, if you're a betting man, it's always good to trust your gut if you feel like a
Yeah,
certain style because you get really good odds. Like if
yeah,
you feel like the underdog's got a puncher's chance, this is
yeah,
the sport where you see these kind of upsets. And
yeah,
100%, this is probably the biggest upset in
yeah,
UFC history for me, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it ranks up there, like among some of the big upsets. The Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards that was a big upset as well.
Yeah,
Not the second one, obviously, the first one. And then
yep,
the Matt Serra GSP. That's a big one. I would even say Whitaker Dricus, man. Like that was a big upset for me. Like I wasn't expecting that to
Mm,
go that way. So yeah, look, lot of things. But look, this bodes well for the middleweight division. I think
100%.
Israel Adesanya gets some well-deserved rest. The rest of the division gets to play around and see where everything pans out. And then, as I said, like Israel Adesanya has earned that right to come back and then challenge the title challenger if needed. I mean, if he needs to take a challengers fight, so be it. Number one contender fight, because I mean that'll also be good. Like for once,
Mm,
after a while, he gets to do them three rounders again, and maybe he could fight the winner of Costa Chimaev. Let's not forget that fight's
yeah,
happening in a month. Right?
I
That's
was
a
about to
huge
say,
fight for the middleweight division, right? Costa and Chimaev, the winner, either one of
huge.
those guys, the winner, right? If Chimaev wins, that's huge, man. Like we know how much the UFC backs him, how much the UFC wants to, cash in on the hype, or on the stardom of Hamza Chimaev, and there's nothing bigger than him fighting for a world title. And one would say that Sean Strickland is a favorable matchup for Hamza, depending on how obviously the Costa fight goes. It's no easy task. Again, one of those guys where Costa, people might think is what happened with the Adesanya fight, and then sort of his theatrics on social media. People might think, he's fallen out of that top five ranking, but man, like he's one good performance away from coming back.
Yeah, one before we hit on the co-main, one thing I wanted to add is I want to get your thoughts on this idea. What do you think about Strickland sits there? We wait for the winner of Hamzat Costa, and then Dricus fights Izzy for no belt. That way, we're all on the same timeline,
Yep.
and then Strickland gets the winners.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely. I
because
mean, the only
because
thing,
Strickland just fought, like, so he could deserve a good
yeah,
a four or
absolutely.
5 month break, you know.
Yeah, I don't think we see a middleweight title defense till next year, early next year, I would say.
Yeah,
But the only thing with that is with Drickers, man, is that one would argue that Drickers had done his due and beat
yeah,
one of the best middleweights, right? I mean, there should be a reward for beating someone like Robert Whittaker, who was unbeatable at the time. Like the only person he lost to was Adesanya, and we see his performances against the likes of Vittori and outclassing opponents. And for
yeah,
Drickers to do that and not just win but finish Whittaker, I think that deserves some sort of recognition, and I feel like that warrants a title fight. But we just gotta wait and see because Dana White seems quite adamant that he wants to go for the rematch.
yeah. See, I think from the UFC's perspective, I agree with you that Dricus earned the title shot, and I think he'll get it. But I think the fact is the window was there and the door closed. Like he could have taken on this opportunity, flown to
Yeah,
Australia, but you get pipped at the post. Strickland stepped up, and the whole timeline's now. We're in a different alternate world now, where Strickland stepped up and grabbed the opportunity. But I think
yeah,
Dricus earned the opportunity to fight Izzy, and I think it would be good for the UFC for those two to fight next. Well, then Strickland fights the winner of Costa or Hamzat.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but but
I
yeah, there's
can,
so many different ways we can do it, man.
yeah, not correct, agree. But like we gotta also mention, man, like the turnaround time wasn't that favorable for either one of
Yeah,
those guys. And we spoke about this even before going into that fight. It's like, look, it's gonna be hard for either Whittaker or Drickers to turn around so quickly to fight in September. And it's a high stakes fight, right? Like you're fighting for a championship. There's genuine bad blood. There's genuine beef, right?
mm,
There's a lot of bragging rights to be contested for. So I don't think, I don't blame Drickus for wanting to be 100% ready to go fight Izzy. But having said that, seeing that performance last Saturday or Sunday, sorry, I don't know, maybe he's thinking or he's probably regretting, or I could have taken it based on even if I wasn't 100%, because, obviously seems like the champion wasn't 100%. But we'll wait and see. Like you said, it's an unpredictable sport, and we know the UFC holds a lot of power in terms of what sort of matchups they
oh
make.
yeah,
So we'll wait and see. It seems like Israel Adesanya's camp wants the rematch. He hasn't openly spoken about it, but obviously he's taking some well-deserved time off.
yeah,
Dana White wants it, so one would expect maybe the rematch does
mm,
take place. I don't know.
yeah. I'm rooting for Izzy's resurrection again, but I'll be remiss if I don't mention this, man. It's 2 losses in 3 fights.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if I'm fine if someone wants to make the argument that he doesn't deserve the rematch,
yeah,
because how many other fighters, if they lost two title defenses out of the last three,
yeah,
it'd be like, okay, like rest, step aside, let someone kind of
yeah,
run the show a little bit. Um,
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Like, and I think everyone's unified in the fact that maybe they're not the rematch straight away. I think
yeah,
every update I've seen or every outlet that I've spoken about it, I've spoken about maybe not the rematch straight away. So hopefully the UFC is paying attention as well. And then
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, the rest of the card overall, we saw some really good knockouts. The Tougher Gang, Pedro. But we're going to start with the co-main next. Bam Bam. Unfortunately, we saw an
yeah.
Ezekiel choke. What did you make of that one?
Man, it was an insane fight. It was just it was just very hectic. Bam Bam delivers, man, every single time. He brings entertainment. He fights for the fans. He puts it all out there. Puts himself out there. Puts his pretty much his record on the line, his life on the line, and he just goes and trades. No matter you look at the size difference between his opponent and him, like man, but he didn't care. And he was having a little bit of success as well with those leg kicks. Volkov obviously, had his own success. It was a good fight. It was an exciting fight. What you'd expect from that, and then obviously, I was thinking, going into the second round, okay, someone's getting knocked out now because they're just trading. But yeah, I didn't expect that submission. So, but yeah, man, like it was tough to see yeah, Bam Bam that way. But man, he gave it his all. It was
Yeah,
entertaining. Dana White said the same thing, man. Like it was game as he always is. Bam Bam.
yeah, definitely. He's still a big name in the division. He's still. We'll wait for the rankings, but he'll be a top 10 guy. He'll stay that way. But unfortunately, he does miss that chance to progress. But
Yeah,
Volkov has been looks like a new man ever
yeah.
since. Yeah, he's
Ever since the loss,
resurged. Yeah,
yeah, ever since the loss to Cyril Gahn, he's gone and changed a lot of things. From a fitness perspective, he looks a lot more fitter, leaner, and
yeah,
for the size of size of him, like
oh,
his fitness is pretty good, man. Like, and I think there's a lot of changes, and it's showing in his performance too. I know he was a bit annoyed that he didn't get the bonus, but
yeah. So is
yeah.
Pedro.
Man, look, to be honest, I actually was annoyed as well. Like in terms of, for me, my favorite performance throughout the whole card was Tyson Pedro's performance. I thought it was just definitely worthy of a bonus.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
They just went and shut him out, man. Like completely shut him out. Like that beautiful combo. Like it was like I think like it was a five-piece combo, and then like sort of landed flush and finished him on the ground. The post-fight celebration, everything was on point. Home ground, man, the crowd went ballistic. Shout out to the Sydney crowd, man. They delivered, and we had no doubt about that. They delivered as predicted. Yeah, man. Like, and Tafa had a great performance. It looked like Austin Lane had no business being in that octagon, right? Like, and it was going the same way the first time, but Tafa's like, you know what? Let me finish you soon. Let me end this. Let me get the bonus. Let me go celebrate early, right? The third fight in the card, man, the flyweights. Woo, that
ooh,
was a hectic, fast-paced fight. Manel, Kape, and Dos Santos, who wasn't successful in the contender series, managed to get a last-minute call-up to fight Manel Kape, which is a top-level, top 10 contender. Took on the challenge and delivered a good fight, man. Like he was clearly getting beaten, but he was tough. He was still resilient, and he had his moments too. But talking of weird fight weeks, man, I feel like starting from that press conference, Manel Cape had like an extremely weird fight week. Tried to fight Easy, tried to fight Kai Kara France, sort of like getting booed. Then even the post fight octagon, there was a couple of them. Like
yeah. F
yeah.
bombs.
I feel like people were saying that the Strickland aura was rubbing off on a lot of people. They just didn't care what they said.
Yeah, you're right, man. A Manel Cap. I think I've been pronouncing it wrong, but I heard the announcer say a
Oh,
Manel Cap. Um,
Cap, and then some say Carp. I don't know. Like we
Cup.
got to ask him.
Yeah, but I got to say, I don't know if you caught his post-fight presser, but he admitted he needs surgery, and he was really banged up in that bout. So I
Yeah,
feel
and
like he did well.
yeah, and he said he came in with an injury. He didn't want to disclose what it was, but I think it was
Mm.
kind of a slight dig at sort of Kape France as well, which is obviously the next fight to
Yeah,
make. Is now like I'm excited to see that fight.
yeah,
I'll tune in. To be honest, man, one thing you got to say is Manuel Kape did well because I was I'm being honest. I wasn't too like keen on sort of his fights prior to this. I knew he was a good fighter, well-rounded, good kind of striker, but sort of that level of excitement wasn't as there as like a Brandon Moreno fight. Now I'm keen to watch this match up, especially after that performance as well. So he's
facts.
done well. He's gone and done what he intended to do, I guess. Um, Man, Jack Jenkins had a freak accident in terms of his elbow
Yeah,
dislocate. Unfortunate because he was going really well in that fight. So hopefully a speedy recovery, no ligament tears. I think he said they're going in for some scans. So hopefully he's going to be back in
yeah,
action soon. Carlos Alberg had a last minute submission, good performance. His coach said he came in injured as well. So which factoring that in, great performance. Jamie Malaki got his win as well, unanimous decision.
yeah.
Um, Unfortunate for Blood Diamond and Shane Young from the CKB. Now,
Very.
that's sort of a string of losses for them, so it'll be interesting to see what the UFC does with that. Um, and then obviously we had another CKB fighter, Kevin Jossett, who opened the card, had a good uh, submission victory over another debutant in Kiefer Crosby, the Irish.
Mm.
So yeah, man. Like so, I think the
Yep.
CKB were three and three. So there were three wins and three losses.
Yeah, so just wanted to shout out there everyone that fought. Some got the win, some didn't on the local scene. But
Yep.
in terms of the first of the Sydney, events or Australian events now that are going to come rolling through, I think we might see a fight night. Obviously, yeah, the Cara France one could be good, could be in Auckland, we'll see,
Yep.
or New Zealand. But
Yep.
Dana White himself flew down, Gaethje flew down, Aljo. I think this was a marquee for the UFC, and I'm just glad they're going to continue to you know um, frequent this region.
Absolutely, man. Spot on. Um, Also, look, on that note, we hope they come to Melbourne as well. It just makes it a little bit easier
Yes,
for us to go to these fights. And obviously, hey, we got a big ass arena here, Marvel Stadium, 60,000, right? Last time we filled it, we'll fill it again. So hopefully we get a good stadium event there.
definitely.
Um,
Izzy's hunting ground where he did the big dance, the walkout.
Absolutely.
He
Yeah.
needs to get back to that mojo.
Yeah. And which he will, man. No doubt he will. And then, hey, we got another big weekend coming up with the UFC Noche. I
Yep.
hope I pronounced that right. With it's a fight night, but it's big. Obviously, it's for Mexican Independence Day. We got Grasso, the strawweight champion, defending a belt against the former champion in Valentina Shevchenko. Massive fight. And then we also got this is obviously I'm not going to even hide it. This is my favorite fight of the card. Jack Della Maddalena versus Kevin Holland, the co-main event.
Ooh,
Super
can't
keen for
wait.
that. Super keen. We've got a few good fights in that card as well. So it's happening in T-Mobile Arena, so it's going to be big. So yeah, man.
Stylistically, that one is like two of my favorite fighters as well. But stylistically, man, fireworks all day, every
Fireworks.
day. Yep.
Fireworks, yeah. And then Jack's been vocal about. Look, I know there was that question mark about my last performance. I want to put a stamp on it, right? And imagine if he goes and dominates someone like a Kevin Holland,
Oh,
right? Man, there's no denying this guy. We're looking
yep.
at like some top contenders for Jack.
Oh, finally, if that Colby and Leon ever happens, I don't know if that's officially booked in.
No, not
Mad-
announced yet.
Madison Square.
No, I feel like they're gonna now move it to December. So
Oh, well,
yeah,
hopefully it happens. Yeah, because Chaos seems like he hasn't fought in 12 months. Um,
yeah, man. Longer
yeah,
than
I
that,
know
to be honest.
I'm not so tough on Leon because I know he defended the belt against Kamaru twice.
Yeah, yeah,
Had the in the rematch, I mean. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
my point was Jack. If Jack gets an emphatic win against Kevin, I think he could shoot all the way up and get a shot.
Yeah,
Why not?
I think he was eyeing for a Wonder Boy fight. that'll be a good one if that happens. But I know Wonder Boy's been talking about Kamaru Usman, so but even
No, yeah,
hey, Jack,
Wonder Boy doesn't want it because I think
nah,
it's to do with the pay, and also he feels like he's got too much to lose. He
much
wants
lose,
to
yeah.
kind of look more up rather than look down.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
hey, if that's done, maybe Jack and Jeff Hands are still new. He hasn't had a fight in
mm,
a while. Or if you want to
yep,
go a little bit higher up, I'm fine
yep.
to see a fight with him and Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, I'd love to see Jack one day also go up to middleweight. I think
Yeah,
he's got the moxie, he's got the build, the strength. Once he puts on extra weight, I think if he's conquered, or if he's ultimately successful in welterweight, I could see him being a middleweight too. What do you think?
yeah, man. Anything is possible. Obviously, we'll have to obviously wait and see. Let's not forget, Whittaker was a welterweight before he moved to
Mm,
middleweight division. But the point to note here is that Jack's doing a lot of good work in the middleweight division, right? So I feel like, yeah,
yep,
he's definitely got that championship run in him, and which we know he will complete. And hopefully we'll see him contest for that the welterweight title in the near future.
yep. And one thing, just before we wrap up, DJ, I want to ask you a question regarding Alex Potan Pereira. A couple of
Yep.
things. What do you think is going through his mind when he sees Izzy lose right after Izzy got the belt back off him? And the second thing is, there was a bit of talk about would we ever see him back at middleweight? He put a little tongue-in-cheek thing saying, "Look like that boat sailed." But
Yep.
what do you think? He's got a big fight up against coming up too.
Yeah, man, great point. Like, yeah, look, I think um, he probably was one of the very few people who was actually backing Sean Strickland to beat Adesanya. He was quite open about it and said, look, if there's anyone who can get this done, it's probably Strickland. And that turned out to be true. In terms of sort of, he was quite classy in terms of how he responded to this whole scenario. He advised, obviously, Adesanya to take some time off and rest and relax.
Mm,
He obviously, I don't think the only thing that intrigued him to come back to middleweight is, Adesanya and that championship. Uh, held If Adesanya held the middleweight championship and being able to, complete that trilogy.
yeah,
Not to say, no, that's not going to happen because, look, it's another thing. It may be a change of scenery. Adesanya taking some time off and putting on some muscle and going to light heavyweight, right? And in that time, if Pereira is able to fight Erie and get the belt, which is no easy task, by the way. But yeah, I don't think we see Alex Pereira coming back to middleweight, to be honest.
yeah. It'd be tough, man. The older he gets, he's huge. He's probably
He's big.
he's bigger than Strickland, and we do got to give Strickland even more credit because we commented, remember, after the weigh-ins, how absolutely drained Strickland
Brian
looked.
Davis. Yeah.
This is probably the toughest weight cut, the travel, the
Yeah.
expectations. I mean, this is what puts it to me the biggest upset because it was against all odds. He had a month to
It
prepare.
was.
He's never traveled out of the US in his life.
Absolutely, man. Against all odds, and these words haven't been any truer than in this instance. Like against all odds, enemy territory, one would say. But look, the way the crowd responded, I felt like he was the home crowd hero, right? But yeah, man, the weight cuts, the sort of preparation, sort of who he fought, all these things, right? And I think he earned it like a boss. And man, not just he has the respect of the entire world now as the middleweight champion. I don't think anyone's questioning it, right? If you
No,
recall, that head kick KO by Leon Edwards obviously was iconic, but there was a lot of question about, look, but was that just luck? You know what I mean? Did he actually win that belt? Did he actually beat the pound for pound number one, or was it just one moment of lapse from Kamaru Usman? And he obviously
yeah,
went on to prove that wrong by winning the decision later on. But in this instance, there was no doubt. Sean Strickland
yeah,
left no doubt. Like when that fifth round bell rang, everyone knew who had won. Even Israel Adesanya. He's been quite vocal about how to conduct yourself after you've gone a distance in a fight, in terms of your body language, in terms of swaying the judges. But you saw him quite dejected, shoulders down, just walking to his corner, while Strickland put his hands up and ran around. It kind of speaks volumes, and Israel Adesanya has always been a realist, right? And he probably understood, okay, well, I didn't win that fight.
yeah, yeah. He just felt after that round one. I said it just changed his whole mindset, and I just think there was no coming back from that. But yeah, absolutely, man. Dominant performance. This opens up a huge storybook for what's to come. Looking forward to it. Talking to you more, DJ. This one's a wrap.
Wrap indeed. Catch you later,
Yep.
guys.
Catch you later, guys. Yep. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Give us a like, and we'll see you on the next episode. We'll be talking about the UFC Noche and some boxing talk coming up. Salute.